terrible condition, and then there's a locust attack. And this book, by the way, told me what locust was. I didn't know what locust was before I had read this book. So I was talking to a friend of mine, and we ended up talking about my books because my new book is lined up for release next month. And we were just discussing my work and how my journey through my publishing of my books has been. And she just told me that, Rahul, in all of your books, you've always had very strong female characters who not only are just strong female characters, but they end up shaping the rest of the characters, rest of the male characters around themselves as well. So why don't you talk about it? Because Women's Day is around the corner and this is a very good time to talk about it. So I thought that was a very good idea. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up 3 of my books and I'm going to examine them from this point of view, that how they have strong female characters and how those characters have shaped the other characters around them. And along with that, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to pick up 3 of my favorite books which have very strong female characters and which might have subconsciously helped me to shape the characters throughout my writing for all the books that I've read. So the first book I am going to talk about is the first book I ever wrote, and that is Those Small Little Things. Now this book is it's hard for me to express how important this book is. It's the first book I ever wrote. I never even knew this was going to become as big a hit as it eventually became. I will talk about this book in detail some other time, my whole journey of getting this book published some other time, but today focusing on the idea that we have at hand, that how this book portrays very strong female characters and how the female characters in this book shape the male character around them. Also, I'll be talking about another book which is a favorite of mine. I will talk about it towards the end of the video when I'm done talking about this book. So Those Small Little Things is a book which I started writing just when I finished college, just when I stepped out of college, and hence it's a coming of an age story. It reflects a lot of my life. It reflects a lot of frustrations which I was going through because I had just finished college and I had just started working. And those of you who have crossed this in your life, you know what a shock it is. Nothing turns out to be the way you had imagined it, and things always go haywire. So that was the premise, and then I was talking to another friend of mine, and we were discussing how to structure this book, because I was very clear that it has to be a story which starts from the central character's childhood and ends when he starts working and he actually steps into the real life, as they say. But how should I structure it, and what should be the central pivot of the whole book? So after a lot of discussion, she suggested that men always have a very important place in a woman's life and women have a very important place in men's life. So why don't you work something around it? Because the kind of ability women have to shape men is unlike anything else. As a kid, a boy child is shaped by his mother a lot. Then later when he grows up, his mother, and if he has any sisters, they become very big influences. And when he goes out to the world and he starts making friends, the friends from the opposite gender end up shaping him very strongly. And when the boy steps into a relationship, the girlfriend also has this very strong power and ability to change the way he thinks. So this idea sounded very interesting to me, and there and then I decided this is how I'm going to weave my whole story. And I have to say it worked out phenomenally. Now today when I look back, when it has been 12 years since the book was first published, there are a lot of flaws that I see in that book, and there are a lot of strengths in that book which I see as well. I'll talk about the strength first. So unlike any other book which generally has one strong female character and everything is focused around that female character, this book essentially focuses on the gender itself. The main character, for those of you who have read the book, he keeps making a lot of friends. Some of them he is romantically involved with, and some of them he's not romantically involved with. But each of them, you can say, gives out a very important life lesson to him and changes him as a person slightly. And I think the first friend that he makes, who's a girl, happens when he is in kindergarten, and then so on and so forth, and finally when he starts working he is in another relationship, and that's the progression of things in the book. So instead of just one character being central to the whole idea, it was the idea that women and girls have this potential of shaping you tremendously. and my books are generally looked upon as romance. And I was having another discussion with another friend the other day, and we were talking about romance fiction, and I I just don't understand that how my work is always classified as romance fiction, because my work is not essentially romance. Because when it comes to romance, it has to be the idea of one love story which is very central to the whole idea, and that's never has been the case in any of my books. Anyway, that's another discussion for another day probably. But there you go, those small little things, a story in which that women play a very important role for one character. Also, if you like the content I'm posting, please subscribe, share, send it across to your friends. It does help me a lot. So, going on to the book that I am going to mention today, which has a very strong female character, and I absolutely love that book. It's called Cause Celeb by Helen Fielding. Now, Helen Fielding, most of you might know for her landmark work called Bridget Jones' Diary, which was a phenomenal bestseller. It kind of changed the landscape of fiction when it came out, and it was made into a very successful series of films as well, starring Renee Zellweger, who I think did a phenomenal job, and she was hilarious in those films. But this is a lesser known book when it comes to Helen Fielding, and it kind of surprises me because I think this is her strongest work. Bridget Jones is acclaimed for the reasons that it is acclaimed for, but I feel somehow this book got shadowed in a way that it shouldn't have been. This is a very good book. I read this book way back. I was in college. I think I bought this book from a bookstore near PVR Priya Cinema Hall. I don't remember the name of the bookstore. It was a very small bookstore, I think, towards the corner of the row of shops, which started from McDonald's and went towards the cinema hall, towards the plaza at the center. It had those tall bookshelves and very nice ambience. I think I have based one of the bookstores in one of my books on that bookstore itself. So in this book, there's this one character who has a miserable life, who is very unhappy with things around her. She's just had a breakup and things are just not going her way. So she decides that she wants to go ahead and do something more purposeful with her life. And she goes to Africa and she volunteers for a certain project. And then she is exposed to a world which she had never seen before. I read it a long time back, so I don't clearly remember, but I think she used to deal with a lot of celebrities before, and then she took this huge jump and became this volunteer for this project to help people. And then, a lot of things happen. There's a lot of poverty there. People are in a terrible condition, and then there's a locust attack. And this book, by the way, told me what locust was. I I didn't know what locust was before I had read this book, and I must have been around 19 or 20 around that time. So then somehow things happen, and then somehow a lot of celebrities come to help her, and that's where the title comes from, Cause Celeb. It's an amazing book. You must read. I'm sure you will enjoy it. Alright, guys, that's it for today. Let's keep the spirit of Women's Day alive. And what are your favorite books when it comes to women centric ideas and women centric books? I would love to hear that as well. So, until next time, keep reading, stay healthy. Cheers.